First and foremost, thank you, Dr. Ablon, for being here with us. Just diving into it, first question is the coronavirus is dominating the global news market. And some people are understandably getting pretty anxious. So just what advice do you have for those that are trying to manage anxiety during such a stressful time?
Yes. Well, it's pretty overwhelming, honestly, and it continues to grow. And so I don't blame people for being anxious. And, anxiety does have some useful roots. It's there for a reason. And one of the reasons we get anxious is that it tells us that there's something we need to do. There's a problem we need to solve. And so, the other way to think about that is, in many cases, the answer to anxiety is action, is taking some action. And so I do think that one of the things that we all can do to help ourselves feel less anxious is take whatever reasonable actions we can. Now, of course, you got to find a balancing act, because you want to be able to go on continuing your life in most of the ways possible, or else you'll feel more anxious. Feeling disconnected, for instance, from other people, is not a good idea. We want to maintain our connections to other people, but there are some basic things we can do to take basic precautions. And I think there's a lot from credible sources out there about hand washing and sanitizing and all kinds of things that we can do. Those things help us to feel better, to calm our nerves and anxiety. The other thing I would say, though, is, we're bombarded these days with information and updates. And while on the one hand that can be helpful, it means it's ever present for us. So I know one of the things that I'm trying to do is, check the news periodically, not constantly, and make sure that my phone is not constantly being bombarded with the latest updates. I can get an update every 3-6 hours or something like that, and I'll be fine. And also make sure that you're doing that from credible sources and not just using social media in general as your sources of information.
Definitely. And something that you brought up is social media, and the younger generations are on social media a lot earlier than I was and than you were, I'm sure. And so it's out there, it's in the news. How do we have these discussions with children? Like, how would you suggest parents and teachers have that conversation without worrying the children too much?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, Trey, unfortunately, social media didn't even exist when I was growing up.
Right.
But how do we have these conversations? Again, I think there are a lot of good resources out there, one of which I'd point people to is PBS. Has on their website really short, sort of good, developmentally appropriate tips for how to have a conversation. But I think a lot of people are emphasizing the need for reassurance and to help kids know that the adults around them are doing everything they can to keep them safe. And also information, putting things in context, helping people understand this, perhaps relative to the flu, which is something most kids know something about. I think, though, in my mind, one of the big things that's missing in a lot of advice is the need to listen first and foremost. Because, when we're anxious and we're trying to settle a child down who's feeling anxious, we can often bombard them with information intended to reassure them and educate them. And while those things have their place, as I was just saying, listening is crucial. Listening to what a kid's understanding of this is. Because as you pointed out, Trey, these kids are getting information all the time from all kinds of people, and a lot of it's misinformation. And we need to first listen. So my first piece of advice is just stop and say to a kid, what have you heard? And what do you think about this? And are you worried? Don't assume that they're worried even. Are you worried? And what are you worried about? Hear them out. Do a lot of what we call active listening. That's then going to put you in a much better position to provide perhaps more accurate information if it's needed, reassurance if it's appropriate, and also talk about actions that can be taken.
Wow, when you say hear them out, listen to them, it really reminds me of our tier 1 and 2 trainings that I've attended, where you're really having a mutual conversation with the child. So I think that'll go a long way in terms of plan A and plan B.
Folks who know our approach, plan B, what you just referred to, collaborative problem solving, the heart of it is what we call the empathy ingredient. And it's a lot of listening, and it's asking questions. It's taking guesses if a kid's not talking. It's reflecting back to the kid what they've heard. It's reassuring them that you really want to understand what's going on in their head, where they're coming from. And that's equally important in moments like this. And I think, again, especially when, we're worried. So we're having a hard time calming our anxiety. One of the ways that we calm our anxiety is by talking like crazy. Better to stop and listen first.
And that's how you would approach dealing with children. But then the other side of things is, how are we going to have these conversations with older loved ones who are seeing that in the news that they may be at a higher risk? What actions should we take to help them out?
Yeah, well, I'm reminded of something that one of the elderly people that I think would qualify as elderly at this point in my life is my grandfather, who's 103. And he always, when people try to help him out with stuff, he's quick to say to people, the very young and the very old do not like to be helped. And I bring that up only because I think we need to be careful here that we are not infantilizing our elders in our attempts to protect them. And so actually, I'm going to give similar advice to what I did just a moment ago. Listen to our elders and see what their perspective is, what they're worried about, what their concerns are, and don't assume that we know or that it's our job to sort of protect them without involving them. They've got to be partners in the process. So it's very similar to when we teach collaborative problem solving. You're inviting them to come to the table. Yes, you have your concerns for your elderly loved ones, but you need to know where they're at and where they're coming from, and engage them in the process of, are there steps that we can be taking together to help protect you?
And so now I kind of want to go back to a point you mentioned earlier about connectedness. So at a time when there are people who are, being quarantined, or there's people who are trying to self-quarantine and maybe step away from interacting with others, like there's a risk that they're losing with that connectedness. What do you suggest to kind of stay safe, but then also remain connected to others?
So technology gets a bad rap when it comes to social connection and connectedness, but what a wonderful thing technology can be in moments like this, where we need to do, what folks are referring to as social distancing. But you can use technology to connect. We happen not to be in the same location now, but I'm feeling pretty connected to you. And we got to know each other in person before, so we got a relationship, but we can reconnect over technology. And that's what I'd recommend. Use technology to connect with your friends and family far and wide, and make sure you're talking and seeing each other face to face and staying in touch with each other, even if you are spending less time physically in the same place with one another.
And just to touch on something that you said there in terms of technology being useful, but then also earlier you mentioned how there's a lot of hysteria in the media. Our intern, Georgie, who I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet, suggested muting words. Like on Twitter, you can mute specific words that can help you avoid seeing a lot of the, hysteria going on right now. So that's a perfect way to balance it too.
Yep. Good to hear. You learn something new every day. I didn't know that.
I'll leave you with this. At a time like this, what are some of the things that you are doing personally to just increase your own self-care and staying regulated?
Got it. Okay. Well, I think personally for me, things that are really important that you'll hear others talk about as well are maintaining the types of routines that I'm used to when there isn't a crisis like this going on, to make sure that I stick to those routines, because oftentimes we start to get away from them. And those are the routines that keep us healthy in the first place. And they're making sure to be careful about your sleep hygiene, getting to bed on time, getting enough sleep. They're making sure you're eating well. They're making sure you're exercising, those kinds of things. I would also say, particularly when people are, I think, keeping to themselves more and inside more, find ways to get outside in a way that you're not around a lot of different people. And particularly, we've had some good weather recently in Boston here. Gosh, what a good opportunity is to get outside some and get some fresh air. And then the last thing I mentioned earlier is just be careful not to always be checking into the news. Make sure that you do it periodically and curate your news so that you're not bombarded at its credible sources.
With that, we'll conclude. And I thank you so much, Dr. Ablon, just for taking the time out to provide us with some helpful tips during a very anxious time. To everyone watching, I would like to point you guys to Dr. Ablon's Twitter. So many helpful resources. We're following you on Twitter now. You're always providing great updates, so we appreciate that, and it would be a great follow for anyone else that's watching to learn more. I appreciate you so much for taking time.
Thanks a lot, Trey. It's good to talk to you. And, I hope that together we'll all navigate this as well as we possibly can and eventually get past it with as little difficulty in everybody's lives as possible. But I know some are deeply affected and have lost loved ones, which, it's just that kind of sadness is unspeakable. And obviously, our thoughts and our concern goes out to all those in that position.
And that's a beautiful way to end it. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Trey. Good to talk to you.